Stop reasoning with voices sent to distract you. Stop trying to negotiate with what was designed to destroy you, whether it's toxic people, your past mistakes, temptations, addictions, or dark thoughts. These are the demons we argue with every day. There is a fundamental difference between confronting something and getting entangled in it. When you argue with darkness, whether it's self-doubt, toxic voices, temptation, or trauma, you begin to validate its presence in your life. Every time you respond to it, engage it, or try to explain yourself to it, you're giving it space it doesn't deserve. Darkness thrives on attention. It grows stronger not necessarily because it has power, but because we feed it with our reactions, our emotions, and our energy. You were never meant to live in a constant cycle of defending your worth or explaining your calling to things that were sent only to derail you. Your design is not that of someone who sits in the mud and debates with shadows, but of someone who walks in light with clarity and strength. The moment you understand your identity and authority, you no longer feel the need to argue with what's beneath you. You don't explain purpose to doubt. You don't convince fear to leave. You walk in faith and fear flees. You were made to rise, not to wrestle endlessly with voices that have no place in your destiny. Stop giving space to what God already told you to silence. You were made to overcome, not to argue. Every time you engage with a negative thought, a toxic conversation, or a harmful person, you're spending your mental and emotional currency. And unlike money, currency can't be earned back easily. It takes time, healing, and intentional focus to restore. The problem is that many of us have unknowingly turned our lives into battlefields of unnecessary conversations, where we try to prove ourselves to people who are committed to misunderstanding us, or we try to fix situations that were never our responsibility to begin with. This kind of negotiation becomes a silent thief. It doesn't scream, show up all at once. It creeps in slowly and pulls you off course. You start to lose your focus, your drive, your vision. Once clear becomes cloudy because you're busy trying to clean up messes that don't belong to you or answer questions that only exist to distract you. Your destiny demands your full presence and power. But when your spirit is tired from entertaining criticism, negativity, and emotional manipulation, you lose the strength to move forward. Time is not just ticking. It's sacred. You can't afford to waste it explaining your value to people who can't see it, or justifying your decisions to voices that were never part of your journey. Every second you spend negotiating with negativity is a second stolen from your progress. And if the enemy can't destroy you, he will settle for distracting you. Don't fall for the trap. You can spend your whole life trying to reason with fear, insecurity, addiction, or negative people, and still find yourself exhausted, empty, and going in circles. That's because these forces don't respond to intelligence, debate, or explanation. You could present the most perfect argument, list every reason why you deserve peace, happiness, or freedom, and yet the darkness won't back off. Why? Because demons don't respect reasoning. They don't care about how much sense you make. Their mission is not to understand you, it's to break you. And the longer you argue with them, the more access you give them to your life. The only language they understand is authority. Spiritual authority is not loud, but it is powerful. It's not about yelling at your demons. It's about knowing who you are and whose you are. It's when you stand up, even in silence, and say, enough, with conviction. Jesus was tempted in the wilderness. He didn't argue or explain. He spoke truth and he spoke with power. That's the example. Don't waste time in debate. Stand in truth. When fear whispers that you're not good enough, start reasoning with it. Declare your identity. When temptation tells you to go back to your old ways, don't negotiate. Draw a line. When voices try to pull you into guilt or shame, you don't plead your case. You step into grace and let your authority speak. You've been given a voice that hell fears, but only if you use it from a place of conviction, not conversation. You weren't born to win arguments with darkness. You were born to walk in light and cast it out. There's a quiet kind of pain that comes from constantly feeling the need to explain who you are, why you are, and where you're going. To people who either can't understand, won't understand, or have no interest in seeing you succeed. Every time you explain yourself to someone committed to misunderstanding you, you give a piece of your peace away. And the same goes for the thoughts that creep in when you're tired, alone, or vulnerable. Those inner critics that say you're not doing enough, you're not worthy, you're not loved. You begin to enter into internal arguments that leave you mentally bruised. But here's the truth: you don't owe explanations to the forces that were never meant to define you. You don't have to prove your worth to people who overlooked your value the moment you stopped fitting into their expectations. You weren't born to live on trial every day of your life, presenting evidence for why you deserve respect, love, or freedom. Constant justification becomes a trap, one where you spend your life trying to win approval from people or inner voices that don't have the capacity to give you what you seek. Start shaping your actions around their opinions, watering down your voice, shrinking your dreams, and questioning your direction. And all of that comes from forgetting this one powerful truth, G, not determined by public opinion or personal doubt. It's anchored in purpose. You're not required to carry everyone's expectations. You're not built to carry the weight of proving yourself over and over again. Difference between humility and self-erasure. Some battles you win by standing firm, not by explaining, not by arguing, not by pleasing, but by knowing. When you know who you are, you stop feeling obligated to convince others. And when you stop justifying yourself to what devalues you, you finally start honoring what empowers you. Negative voices are persistent. They echo in your mind when you're alone. They whisper in moments of weakness, scream the loudest when you're on the edge of something great. These voices aren't always external. Often they live inside of us, shaped by past experiences, trauma, rejection, or failure. Things like, you're not ready, you're not good enough, you'll never make it. And the worst mistake we make is giving them room to speak freely by entertaining their lies, arguing with their logic, or trying to suppress them with silence alone. But silence by itself is not enough. You silence negativity not by ignoring it, but by overpowering it with truth, walking in confidence, and backing your beliefs with consistent action. Truth exposes what lies try to distort. When the voice in your head tells you that you're unworthy, you don't negotiate. You declare the truth: you are enough, you are chosen, you are growing. Doesn't come from always feeling strong. It comes from acting in alignment with your values, even when fear is present. The more you act in spite of doubt, the weaker the negative voices become. And action, the final blow. Because while negativity thrives in overthinking and hesitation, it can't survive in movement. Every step forward, no matter how small, is a statement that says, I will not be controlled by fear. Every time you do the work, speak the truth, show up when it's hard, you starve those voices of their power. You don't silence darkness by begging it to be quiet. You turn on the light, truth. That light is confidence. That light is bold, consistent action. You can't control every thought that enters your mind, but you can control what stays. And when you fill your space with truth and purpose, negativity will have nowhere to sit. It's not just a feeling, it's a spiritual resource. It is the calm within you that allows clarity to rise, decisions to be made wisely, and progress to move forward without unnecessary burden. And yet, far too often, trade that peace away in moments of emotional weakness. For the sake of being heard, being right, or being accepted, we step into arguments we should walk past. We engage with people who thrive on chaos. Only purpose is to provoke, not to understand. Toxic conversations don't begin as obviously poisonous. Sometimes they come disguised as concern, disguised as curiosity, disguised even as love. But if you pay attention, you'll recognize the signs. Your energy drops, your spirit feels heavy, and you walk away more confused than before. That's the price of letting the wrong conversations into your sacred space. Your peace is your anchor, your compass. And when you allow toxic dialogues to invade it, You slowly become reactive instead of proactive. You begin to defend instead of discern. And the more you explain yourself to people who aren't listening to understand, the more you disconnect from your purpose. Protecting your peace doesn't mean avoiding every hard discussion. It means knowing the difference between necessary growth and needless warfare. Some conversations are sent to challenge you, and others are sent to chain you. And the only way to know the difference is to value your peace so deeply that you become unwilling to gamble it for temporary satisfaction or emotional wins. Because someone speaks to you doesn't mean they deserve a reply. Just because a topic is brought up doesn't mean it deserves your energy. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is silence. Sometimes walking away is the loudest message you'll ever send. Because when peace becomes your priority, your power becomes undeniable. There's a deep desire in many of us to heal what's broken, mend what's torn, and make things right. Even when those things were never meant to be part of our long-term journey. We stay in situations that drain us, relationships that confuse us, and environments that limit us, all because we feel a responsibility to fix them. But not everything broken is ours to repair. Some things are meant to fall apart so that you can finally move forward. Trying to fix what you were meant to leave is like watering a dead plant. It keeps you busy but never fruitful. And in that constant effort to make it work, you lose valuable time, energy, and emotional strength that could be spent building something better. There's a difference in perseverance and misplaced loyalty. It's noble to care, but it's dangerous to stay attached to things that keep you stuck. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away. Not because you gave up, but because you finally woke up. Woke up to the reality that your healing doesn't come from staying in familiar pain, but from stepping into unfamiliar peace. You're not abandoning your purpose when you leave toxic spaces. You're protecting it. God doesn't call you to be the savior of every storm. Sometimes He calls you to let the ship sink so you can learn to swim toward a new shore. There are people, patterns, and problems that will never change, not because change isn't possible, but because their purpose in your life has expired. Don't let guilt convince you to stay in what grace has already released you from. When you keep trying to fix what's finished, you create cycles of delay. Destiny can't unfold in a room you were supposed to exit. Freedom begins when you stop patching up what was never meant to be permanent. Some chapters aren't broken, they're just over. Let them be. Walk away, not in anger, but in alignment. In a world full of noise, temptations, and endless options, distractions are not just occasional annoyances. They are spiritual weapons designed to detour your destiny. Every time you set your heart on a goal or make a decision to grow, distractions show up. They come dressed as comfort, disguised as opportunity or masked as urgency. And if you're not anchored in faith and driven by purpose, you get pulled off course again and again. But when your faith is strong, you remember who holds your future. You stop chasing approval and start following divine alignment. Faith gives you inner clarity. It keeps your eyes fixed, not on what's loud, but on what's lasting. Reminds you that you weren't created to respond to every voice, every urge, every invitation. Purpose, on the other hand, gives your life structure and direction. It becomes your filter. When you know what you're here to do, everything deserves your time. Not every message deserves a reply. Not every battle deserves your sword. Purpose allows you to say, no without guilt and, oh yes, without fear. When faith and purpose walk together, you become immovable. Not because the distractions stop, but because your spirit is too focused to follow them. You resist temptations not through willpower alone, but through a deep understanding that your calling is too great to be delayed by detours. Faith strengthens your soul, purpose sharpens your vision. Together, they build a foundation so strong that even when storms come or voices rise, they're grounded. The world will always try to pull you into what's urgent, loud, and shallow. But with faith in your heart and purpose in your steps, you'll have the strength to walk away from anything that doesn't align with where you're meant to go. There's a deep desire in many of us to heal what's broken, mend what's torn, and make things right, even when those things were never meant to be part of our long-term journey. We stay in situations that drain us, relationships that confuse us, and environments that limit us, all because we feel a responsibility to fix them. But not everything broken is ours to repair. Some things are meant to fall apart so that you can finally move forward. Trying to fix what you were meant to leave is like watering a dead plant. It keeps you busy but never fruitful. And in that constant effort to make it work, you lose valuable time, energy, and an emotional strength that could be spent building something better. There's a difference between perseverance and misplaced loyalty. It's noble to care, but it's dangerous to stay attached to things that keep you stuck. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is walk away. Not because you gave up, but because you finally woke up. Woke up to the reality that your healing doesn't come from staying in familiar pain, from stepping into unfamiliar peace. You're not abandoning your purpose when you leave toxic spaces. You're protecting it. God doesn't call you to be the savior of every storm. Sometimes He calls you to let the ship sink so you can learn to swim toward a new shore. There are people, patterns, and problems that will never change, not because change isn't possible, but because their purpose in your life has expired. Don't let guilt convince you to stay in what grace has already released you from. When you keep trying to fix what's finished, you create cycles of delay. Destiny can unfold in a room you are supposed to exit. Freedom begins when you stop patching up what was never meant to be permanent. Some chapters aren't broken. They're just over. Let them be. Walk away not in anger, but in alignment. In a world full of distractions, negativity, and emotional chaos, maintaining focus and guarding your heart is no longer optional. It's necessary. Your mind is the control center of your life, and your heart is the wellspring of your purpose. Either of those are left open to every voice, every emotion, or every influence, you'll constantly find yourself drained, confused, and spiritually disoriented. Darkness doesn't always show up in obvious forms. Sometimes it slips in through subtle thoughts, familiar temptations, or toxic conversations that seem harmless at first glance. But when your mind is focused, deeply rooted in truth, aligned with your values, and centered on what truly matters, you begin to notice the difference between what feeds your soul and what starves it. You no longer entertain every voice just because it's loud. You don't chase every opportunity just because it's shiny. Focus allows you to filter. It helps you cut through the noise and keep your eyes on what builds, heals, and elevates. Alone is not enough. You must also protect your heart, because your heart holds your love, your passion, your energy, your fire. And if that becomes wounded or contaminated by bitterness, comparison, or unforgiveness, you'll begin to lose your spark. Protecting your heart doesn't mean building walls. It means building wisdom. It means learning when to speak and when to stay silent, when to connect and when to step back. A protected heart doesn't get pulled into every storm. It doesn't get tricked by guilt or controlled by manipulation. It knows its worth and sets its boundaries. And when you combine a focused mind with a guarded heart, you become powerful. You become steady. Darkness may knock, but it doesn't get in, because when your inner life is disciplined and deeply rooted, you don't need to fight every shadow. You simply walk in so much light, darkness has no place to land. So today, make the decision to stop giving your energy to what was designed to steal it. No more explaining your worth to doubt. No more wrestling with fear. No more entertaining voices that were never meant to guide you. You are not here to argue with demons. You are here to defeat them by standing in truth, walking in purpose, and living with peace. Close the door. Lift your head forward with the quiet confidence of someone who knows that the war is already won. Not by shouting, not by debating, but by refusing to sit at tables where your spirit doesn't belong. Because when you stop arguing with demons, you finally start aligning with your destiny.